Hello and welcome back, everybody. So today I'm going to be going over my November wrap up. I know there wasn't a whole lot of videos in November, just been going through a lot, so you know. But anyways, I did manage to drown myself in 19 books. 6 of those were arcs because in my last video talking about my TBRs for December and November, I talked about how I wanted to focus on my arc reads. So I did get through 6 of them, and I want to say I only accepted, I think I accepted 6 back. So I don't think I made a dent in my arc backlog at all. I'm working against myself here. So out of those 19 books, 9 of them were fantasy, 9 were romance, and 1 was science fiction. So now I'm just going to do a quick run through and give you guys the star ratings, and then I'm only going to talk about a few of them. First up was the arc Lantern by Burgundy Athena Pendragon. I gave this one 2 stars. This was just, it's a matter of reader versus like interest kind of thing. It's nothing against the author or anything like that. It's just the storytelling just wasn't my preference. And there was the arc Merlin's Apprentice, The Mage by Susan McCauley. I give this one 3 stars. Then I read The Night Raven by Johan Rundberg. This is the first book in the Manvind and Hoff series. It's a middle grade series. I gave it 4 stars. I very much enjoyed it. And I read the very short story First Date by Rex Burke. I gave it a 3.5. Then I read Amelia Sand and the Silver Queens. This is a 4.5. Loved it. Then we have The Alien's Bite by Ella Blake. This was a 1 star. Then we have Time Thief, Mind Raider, Soul Stealer, and Salvation. These are all by Anna Hackett. It was a short story collection that she had up for free. The Time Thief was 2 stars, Mind Raider was 1 star, Soul Stealer was 1 star, and Salvation was a DNF. Then I have The Lazarus Key by Rachel Alkus. This was a 4.5. Oh my god, I loved this one. Then I did a reread of The Sleeper and the Spindle by Neil Gaiman, 5 stars. I do the audiobook for these every now and then. I just get the need to listen to a Neil Gaiman book. I love them, and so I listened to that one. And then I also did an immersive read with Odd and the Frost Giants, which is also by Neil Gaiman. And the first time I ever read this one, you know, it was just through audiobook, so now I own it, so I did an immersive read. But 5 stars as well for this one. After that, I read How the King of Elfheim Learned to Hate Stories by Holly Black, part of the Folk in the Air series. And I gave this one a 3.5, but I believe I rounded it up on Goodreads to a 4. Reaver's Hunt by Star Huntress. This was a DNF. After that, I read Claimed by the Hunter, as well as Wanted by the Hunter, both by Leanna Lee, both of them 4 stars. Then I read Godkiller by Hannah Kenner. This was 2 stars. And then I ended the month with A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Haro, and this was a 1 star. Hindsight, I should have DNF'd both those books. So let's go ahead and let's start with the DNFs, since I had 2 of them this month. So the first one being Salvation by Anna Hackett. So what ended up happening with this little series, this little free series that Anna had up, I ended up accidentally spoiling myself with the 4th book, because I started reading the 4th book before I read the 3rd book, and I hit a certain point in the 4th book where I was like, hold on a second, something's not adding up correctly. And she gave a redemption arc to the villain, who has been the villain since like the very first book. And that was when I realized I was missing something, and I went back and I was like, oh, this is the 4th book. So I went back and I read the 3rd book, which was terrible. And so I ended up just making the decision, because I didn't like the redemption arc character. I didn't like that she gave this villain a redemption arc, because the things that he did throughout the book does not warrant him being allowed to have a redemption, in my opinion, especially since it involved like child trafficking, sex trafficking, murder, things like that. And I was like, no, those guys don't deserve redemptions. And so I ended up DNFing it. Also, like, the characters, like, they met, and like 20 minutes later, maybe an hour at most, they were already banging, and I was like, no. The other one that I DNF was Reaver's Hunt by Sky Huntress and Ellen Wynn. It's a duo. This was because plotting is important when we write stories. I'm just saying, usually it's good to have a good plot going, or at least a plot of some sort. This was one of those ones where the guy just kind of like, he stalks her from afar, and then he ends up getting poisoned or whatever. Yeah, he gets poisoned, and then he spends like the first like 20% of this book just cracked out on poison, and you know, she's like, oh, my big savior, and stuff like that. And then once he's not poisoned anymore, all of a sudden he's like, let's go explore the world and learn about the history, which everything on this planet everything was confusing. That made no sense. There was no direction at all. The characters were bland. They had zero chemistry. So many times she was like, he put his life on the line for me. And I was like, sweetheart, he was cracked out on poison. What are you referring to? What are you referring to? Because not once did he ever lay his life on the line for you. Yeah, I'm confused. Where is this coming from? So it was just really poorly put together, and I wasn't going to sit there and sift through it. I was reading it to initially get to the mecha part that's in it, because my friend said there was mecha in it, and she was like, I'm confused by it. She was like, maybe it's me, maybe it's a book. So I read up to there, and I was like, it's the book, it's not you. It's the book. I was like, you're a smart woman. It's the book. So that was the other DNF. So now we'll go on to the two disappointments. And these were very, very big disappointments for me. And the first one being A Spindle Splintered by Alex E. Harrow. Up until this point, I've heard a lot of people say you're either going to really love Alex E. Harrow's writing or you're just not going to mesh with it. This particular book was not a great introduction for me with getting into her storytelling. This was a book where the author clearly wanted you to get a certain message, and so she was just gonna just shove it down your throat as much as she possibly could, while also having I guess an internal competition with herself to seeing how many pop culture references she could fit per page. For the most part, I can handle pop culture references in small little things. I can usually handle it better in middle grade books. It works differently in those books for me. But for some reason, the adult fantasies and stuff like that, it's just weird to me. And I'm just like, what are you doing? But it was just rife full of them. And I was just like, okay, I get it. And then the third other problem was the main character. It's one thing to write a main character who's just not fun to follow. It's another to where you're like, oh, you're one of those people that are just so fun at parties, aren't you? Anyways, and I like unlikable characters. For instance, the Broken Empire trilogy by Mark Lawrence. I like York. He's an unlikable character, but I enjoy his character. This, no. No. So I will not be continuing with this because I know there's a second one. I don't know if it's supposed to be a long series or if it's just going to be the duology, but I'm not going to continue. I'm getting rid of this book. I'm now apprehensive to pick up anything else by them because I did not jam with this at all. The other really big disappointment was Godkiller by Hannah Kanner. I do plan on doing a actual review video for this one because I do have a lot of thoughts on it. But overall, I think it was just poorly constructed. I don't think the author put a lot of effort into creating the world, and the characters, they were mostly fine. The portion of the story that I cared about took a back burner, even though it felt like it should have been the main plot line, because everything kind of revolved around that one particular character. And then the sub-romance story plot in it, could have done without it. Could have. Also think the LGBT rep had issues. It's great for disability rep, but overall I think it was just very poorly constructed and I had a lot of issues with it. But like I said, I do plan on doing a fuller video of my thoughts on this particular book, but it was a major disappointment because everybody was like, oh, it's so amazing, it's gonna be the next big hit, whoop whoop whoa, and I was like, yeah, no. And this is a Waterstones edition, so I will be getting rid of mine, selling it off and everything. So yeah, I won't have to worry about buying the second one for that. I think if I end up continuing it, I'm going to wait until after it's been released and I can get it through the library and maybe some other reviews have come out to even see if it's worth my time. So now I'm going to talk about my surprises, and that would be the 2 romance books, Claimed by the Hunter and Wanted by the Hunter by Leanna Lee. These are books 1 and 2 of the Zarkin Warriors series that she has, and I thoroughly loved both of these. Not 5-star worthy, but I enjoyed them immensely. I think the author has a very creative plot line going on. It doesn't involve sex slavery, which is fantastic. Instead, in this series, there are these bug-like things that have come to Earth. They have attacked Earth. They're eating everything up. And the Zarkin Warriors, a race of aliens, have come to Earth to help fix the problem. And of course, all the humans, people are like, now you're here to overtake us. And they're like, nah, we just want to like take care of the problem that we inadvertently caused. You know, and they are basically just all clones of like these great hunters and warriors and whatnot. And so it's just, you know, all men or whatever. And the Zarkins find out that they are compatible with human women and such. And I really appreciate that the author tackles racism within the book, because the Earth women who end up, you know, in these relationships with these aliens, you know, they get severely looked down upon. It's not so much as the alien men who are looked down upon, but the women are called the foulest and nastiest things. And it kind of like goes along with that idea of how even in like any situation where like it involves both a man and a woman, the woman is going to get the worst end of it. Like it by that particular group of people. You know, it just very much screams, I'm super insecure about myself, so it's her fault that that big alien guy is treating her good. And now it's her fault that she wants to be with him and things like that, you know. They obviously want to kill off the alien men and everything too, but yeah, the hatred, the racism towards the aliens and then the hatred towards the women is so well done in these books that you're like, yeah, that is realistic. And I like that the author tackles it, because a lot of times in these books, you know, it's just kind of like overlooked or whatever. You never really see like any outside perspectives. They also had really good action. There was great story plotting going on. I didn't come across like any plot holes or anything. The male characters are also very, very likable. I do like the second book male character so much more than the first one, because he is a hot mess. He's just a hot mess. Normally, like in these books, if you guys read romance and everything, most of these men, you know, they're very like well kept, they're organized, they got everything like going how they want it to go. They don't own a lot of stuff. No, not the second book guy. No, that guy's a mess. He has drawers just full of stuff. He tinkers with things. He's unorganized. He's messy, and I'm like, you're such a hot mess. You know, but like they're cute, they're sweet. Like when it comes to my romances, I want my men to be like super sweet and adorable and stuff. I don't do the whole brooding, angry kind of guy. I don't do that. But yeah, they shouldn't have taken me by surprise as much as they did, because my best friend has loved this series. She has read it like 3 times this year, and she found it this year. But it still took me by surprise as to actually how good it was, considering the sea of romances that we have like slogged through that were not good. So yeah, I will be continuing on with that series for sure. So now let's talk about my 2 favorites. And the first one going to Amelia Sand and the Silver Queens by Jim C. Hines. This was just pure fun. I will say, when I initially agreed to read it, because this was an arc, I had thought there was going to be like a lot of older ladies fighting in this, like, because the Silver Queens is referring to older ladies. So I thought like, oh cool, book with like some older ladies who are going to do some fighting. There really isn't a whole lot of that going on, but that's fine. Because the few scenes where one of them did like show a little feistiness and, you know, do a little defending were definitely worth it, but it also made sense. They're old. They're old. Their bodies aren't built for it. And Amelia was adorable. That would be our little goblin girl here. She was absolutely adorable. The thing that I loved most is the message that the book sends, because the book really pushes the message, but not in like a shove it down your throat kind of way. But it pushes the message of accepting who you are and not letting other people's ideas and prejudices change the way of how you view yourself. What you view yourself is always more important. And also that like you're not any less because you're different. So the goblins in this world, they are treated like trash, essentially. You know, they're walked all over, they're not treated well, you know, they're looked down upon. So Amelia tends to look down upon herself, even though she's very smart, she's very capable, she's very caring, you know, and it takes these older ladies to like really help her understand you are worth something. And I really loved it because like it's a message that shines through without the author having to like be like, listen to this message. It really shines through with how he executes it throughout the entire book, because these elderly ladies are very much trying to get Amelia to understand that you are good at what you do. You are smart. You're not stupid. You're not lazy, you know, and just because your culture does things a certain way doesn't mean it's bad, doesn't mean it's nasty or horrible. Like, that's just what your people do, that's what your culture do, and that's fine. And I really, really liked that. So it's definitely a fantastic book. I definitely say it's worth reading. This is one of the things that I love about middle grade, is how well they get a message across without shoving it down your throat in the most obnoxious way possible. They manage to just create these beautiful plots where they can get a message through where you're like, that's a great message. And I liked the combination of like the real world with like this fantasy world. I thought he pulled those together really well. But for me, just the overall plot line surrounding Amelia and accepting who she is really shined. So yeah, definitely worth checking out if you enjoy middle grade. And then the last book that is, after looking over everything I've read, is definitely my favorite book of the entire month, and that would be The Lazarus Key by Rachel Alkis. Rachel reached out to me with an arc for this book, and I was like, yeah, sure, of course, like I'm going to read it because I love her Bounty Hunter series, which all of you guys should go read her Bounty Hunter series so I can get the rest of that series. Thank you very much. So anyways, The Lazarus Key is science fiction. And basically you follow Sam Brody, who works for the government in the wildlife sanction. They, you know, make sure people aren't like illegally hunting when they shouldn't be hunting and stuff like that. So they end up getting entangled in a new like FBI subgroup where they basically look into cases like Bigfoot. Only this one, they're dealing with animals from different eras that are technically extinct, but they're like showing up again. And they're like, what is happening? And the plot becomes so much more than that. And for me, I found the most compelling parts of the story from the villain's side point, because he is manipulating these two scientists to make what he wants, and he genuinely felt like a real morally gray character at the start of the book, and then by the end of the book, you were like, that's a full-blown villain right there. That guy is just, he's got everybody fooled. Like, and it was just compelling all the way through, because like, I wanted to know the outcome of everything. I wanted to see how Sam and her team were going to make the connection to the person who was actually the ringleader of the entire situation. And what I also really liked was the villain's point of view started 10 years in the past, whereas Sam started in the present, and you get to see through the book everything start to come like into play, and eventually the timelines meeting up together, which I thought was done really, really well. And there's a ton of action, and it's always so well choreographed that it's so easy to follow along with what's going on, but it's also like very high impact. A lot of her action scenes I feel like would translate very well to the TV. Like her Bounty Hunter series, I think would do great as a TV series, honestly. And that's not just me saying that because it's one of my favorites. But it's the way that Rachel like writes her stories, where you can just be like, if they wanted to make this on TV, it would translate really, really well. But like I said, the action was great. It was super explosive. I remember telling my friend about it, and she was super invested. She was like, you need to keep me on the updates of what's happening next. The only reason it's getting a 4.5 is because in the middle, there was a moment where it did like dip in pacing. It like kind of like slowed down a little bit, and then it started like repeating some of the information from like the beginning of the book, which was a little weird because I was like, I just kind of read that earlier. But then once you get past that and it picks back up and goes back to the main storyline and everything, it goes from there, and it just starts flying, and you're just like, oh my God, what's happening next? What's happening next? And then the ending was, I was like, what? No. So this is going to be a series for sure. The ending, definitely, I was not expecting that. I was like, no. So I'm definitely looking forward to the next one, because I'm like, I need to know where this goes with this character, because something happens to a very particular character, and I was like, what does it mean? What does it mean? So it is definitely going to be a series, so I am looking forward to seeing what the next one is. I really liked that I didn't think initially the idea, like, when I agreed to read the book, I agreed to read it because I do like Rachel's writing. But when you read the synopsis, you're kind of like, I don't know, it's interesting. Like federal wildlife and reserve, I think that's what it is. Like, I don't know. But then when you actually start reading it, you're like, hold on a second. Like, this is good stuff right here. It was very addicting. I think I read it in 2 or 3 days. So yeah, definitely highly recommend that one if you're looking for a sci-fi with like a slightly different edge to it, where it's not so much as like in space or anything, but it's more like dealing with the actual science side of stuff, because it dealt with, bringing back extinct animals and doing research and stuff like that. It doesn't get like too super technical, but it does involve like that science edge to it. So definitely worth checking out. So that is everything that I read. If there's anything, like if any of the other books from the opening list where I gave ratings has like caught your interest, you're more than welcome to like drop me a message and be like, hey, what was it about that book you didn't like? What was about that book you did like? I definitely don't mind. Other than that, like, subscribe, all of those great things, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.